Hello everybody, it's a Vertical Sandwich. Welcome to Outside. So this greenhouse space is a place where the sun this time of year really shines in my face. In fact, this is like the 18th time I've tried to review this book, so we'll see if we can make it work this time. I switched cameras at one point, I just had some reviews messed up, and then the last one I did, the sun was shining and cast a reflection of the camera on my chest. So we've moved out into the woods at the edge of the yard, and this is Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers, the Hugo Award winner in 1960. So I rant and rave about the 60s list a lot, and for me, actually, this is one of the weaker installments of the 60s list for Hugo Award winners. So there is a dog right over here, and she is playing on the edge of the woods. She has found a stick she likes, and it's connected to a tree, so she's going to fight with that. But dog aside, you'll hear the dog. Starship Troopers. So, join the Army and see the universe. In one of Heinlein's most controversial bestsellers, a recruit of the future goes through the toughest boot camp in the universe, and into battle with the Terran mobile infantry against mankind's most alarming enemy. So, let's just jump in here, and we'll start at Chapter 6. Johnny Rico, who is the main character in the book. By the way, if you're familiar with the Paul Verhoeven movie, Starship Troopers, it's not a lot like this. Paul Verhoeven made some very overt political statements with his movie. His movie is brilliant. I mean, I love Starship Troopers, and I love all of Verhoeven's stuff. He did Total Recall, which is obviously a Philip K. Dick adaptation, and he did RoboCop. He also did some stuff like, I think he did Showgirls and Basic Instincts, and then left the United States because he said we didn't understand his work. And that might not be true, but Total Recall is amazing. Total Recall is amazing. Obviously based on They Sell Dreams for Wholesale. And RoboCop is just a classic, inspired an NES game and things like that. And then Starship Troopers, he wanted to make an overt point about the Nazis and Nazi Germany and kind of fascism in general. And his book is very anti-fascist. And this book was accused of, or his movie is very anti-fascist. And this book was accused of being very pro-fascist. And my thought about that is and very pro-military. And this book inspired, it introduced the idea of kind of mech armor, which is like a mainstay of all kinds of science fiction stuff now. And it introduced the idea of like citizens having to earn the right to vote and things like that. And that idea obviously is very controversial to Americans. He also so this book is vehemently pro kind of military from Johnny Rico's perspective, right? And I think it's unfair to assign that to Heinlein, right? That's always been my thought about it, is whether or not you think the book is harmful and the ideas in it are harmful, which you can, to say that, you know, it inherently makes Heinlein this kind of pro-fascist guy, you know, you can... The Moon is a Harsh Mistress is a thing he wrote, right? And it's kind of the opposite to... I'm not going to put you in the video again. Don't chew my books. So, you know, I mean, The Moon is a Harsh Mistress is very pro the opposite, those kind of things. It's very pro kind of, I mean, it's pro polygamy. And, you know, the main character is very, matriarchy, polygamy, and kind of like a socialism, not even socialism, it's like a libertarianism. So, it's like, and I mean, for me, my thoughts about Heinlein is that he really liked the idea of being political in science fiction. That those ideas were important to him. That the idea of science fiction as a political animal was at the heart of what he did. And Joe Haldeman as well. Like, Joe Haldeman obviously believes that science fiction is a very political medium, right? A lot of people don't. Isaac Asimov, I don't think you would argue what you really thinks of science fiction as a thing for, you know, politics to be put forward. And certainly Arthur C. Clarke did some apologizing later in his life about kind of the ideas he put forward in science fiction, but he wasn't a very his His apologies were for his paranormal aspects of science fiction. I know Heinlein late in his life really was annoyed by how much attention this book got that was negative. Where he just said, nobody cares about this book except to complain about it. Like, that's all I ever hear about. And that was 20 years after it was written. So, let's read a bit. It was the night after Hendrik was kicked out that I reached my lowest slump at Camp Curry. I couldn't sleep, and you have to have been through boot camp to understand how far down a recruit has to sink before that can happen. But I hadn't had any real exercise all day, so I wasn't physically tired, and my shoulder still hurt even though I had been marked duty. And I had that letter from my mother preying on my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear that crack and see Ted slump against the whipping post. I wasn't fretted about losing my boot chevrons. That no longer mattered at all, because I was ready to resign, determined to. If it hadn't been the middle of the night and no pen and paper handy, I would have done so right then. Ted had made a bad mistake, one that lasted all of half a second, and it really had been just a mistake too, because while he hated the outfit, who liked it? He had been trying to sweat it out and win his franchise. He meant to go into politics. He talked a lot about how, when he got his citizenship, there will be some changes made, you wait and see. Well, he would never be in public office now. He had taken his finger off his number for a single instant, and he was through. If it could happen to him, it could happen to me. Suppose I slipped, next day or next week, not even allowed to resign, but drummed out with my back striped. Time to admit that I was wrong and Father was right. Time to put in that little piece of paper and slink home and tell Father that I was ready to go to Harvard, and then go to work in the business, if he would still let me. Time to see Sergeant Zim, first thing in the morning, and tell him that I had had it. But not until morning, because you don't wake Sergeant Zim, except for something you're certain that he will class as an emergency. Believe me, you don't. Not Sergeant Zim. Sergeant Zim. He worried me as much as Ted's case did. After the court-martial was over and Ted had been taken away, he stayed behind and said to Captain Frankel, "May I speak with the battalion commander, sir?" "Certainly, I was intending to ask you to stay behind for a word. Sit down." Zim flicked his eyes my way and the captain looked at me. I didn't have to be told to get out. I faded. There was nobody in the outer office, just a couple of civilian clerks. I didn't dare go outside because the captain might want me. I found a chair back of a row of files and sat down. I could hear them talking through the partition I had my head against. BHQ was a building rather than a tent, since it housed permanent communication and recording equipment. But it was a minimum field building, a shack. The inner partitions weren't much. I doubt if the civilians could hear, as they each were wearing transcriber phones and were bent over typers. Besides, they didn't matter. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. Well, maybe I did. Zim said, "Sir, I request a transfer to a combat team." Frankel answered, "I can't hear you, Charlie. My tin ear is bothering me again." Zim, "I'm quite serious, sir. This isn't my sort of duty." Frankel said testily, "Quit bellyaching your troubles to me, Sergeant. At least wait until we've disposed of duty matters. What in the world happened?" Zim said stiffly, "Captain, that boy doesn't rate 10 lashes. Frankel answered, "Of course he doesn't. You know who goofed, and so do I." "Yes, sir, I know." "Well, you know even better than I do." Sorry, there's a little spider on my arm. I'm just trying to get him off. I just don't want him hurt. "Well, you know even better than I do that these kids are wild animals at this stage. You know when it's safe to turn your back on them and when it isn't. You know the doctrine and the standing orders about Article 908. Oh, you must never give them a chance to violate it. Of course some of them are going to try it. If they aren't aggressive, they wouldn't be material for the MI. They're docile in ranks. It's safe enough to turn your back when they're eating or sleeping or sitting on their tails and being lectured. But get them out in the field in a combat exercise or anything that gets them keyed up and full of adrenaline, and they're as explosive as a hatful of mercury fulminate. You know that. All the instructors know that. You're trained to watch for it, trained to snuff it out before it happens. Explain to me how it was possible for an untrained recruit to hang a mouse on your eye. You should never have laid a hand on you. You should have knocked him cold when you saw what he was up to. So why weren't you on the bounce? Are you slowing down?" "I don't know," Zim answered slowly. "I guess I must be." If true, a combat team is the last place for you, but it's not true. Or wasn't true the last time you and I worked out together. 3 days ago. So what slipped? Zim was slow in answering. I think I had him tagged in my mind as one of the safe ones. There are no such. Yes, sir. But he was so earnest, so doggedly determined to sweat it out. He didn't have any aptitude, but he kept on trying. That I must have done that subconsciously. Zim was silent, then added, "I guess it was because I liked him." Frankel snorted. An instructor can't afford to like a man. I know it, sir. But I do. They're a nice bunch of kids. We've dumped all the real twerps by now. Hendrick's only shortcoming, aside from being clumsy, was that he thought he knew all the answers. I didn't mind that. I knew it all at that age myself. The twerps have gone home, and those that are left are eager, anxious to please, and on the bounce, as cute as a litter of collie pups. A lot of them will make soldiers. So that was the soft spot. You liked them. So, this is all about somebody going through basic training and kind of becoming a soldier, and then realizing, and arguing to the audience. Johnny Rico is arguing to the audience that what they do is in the future equivalent of the, essentially the Marines, fighting these aliens that are bugs, is important. That it is the foundation of the society in which he lives. And he honestly believes this. It is his purpose for being who he is. And he'll tell you that through the book. And is it pro-military? Yeah, it's pro-future military, kind of this limited democracy kind of. I don't know if earning your franchise is really. I mean, I guess it is. It's democracy, right? It's probably Republican government the way our early Republican government worked, where you had to be a landowner and things like that. Yeah. So, I don't know that necessarily, like I said, it's a controversial novel because it seems to be very anti-communist. It seems to be very pro-military. It seems to be, a statement about the Cold War. And those things are all probably true, right? Those things are all probably what's in Heinlein's mind while he's writing this. But I just want to bring to people's attention that, that is the essence of a lot of good science fiction, right? To say the Forever War isn't about Vietnam is blind, right? The Forever War is clearly about Haldeman's experience in Vietnam and translating it to, science fiction. So is this about the Cold War? It was written in 1960. I mean, the Cold War is really starting to cook up at this point. So, let me kind of, we're starting the Kennedy presidency, right, when this is, written. So, Khrushchev is in charge. Stuff is going to get really, really, really crazy. Korea has happened. Vietnam is about to happen. So, is it a controversial classic of military adventure, as the title says, or as the cover says? Yes. Yes, it is. Is it a Heinlein novel? Yes. Here's the big question. Do I like it? No, I hate this book. As far as Heinlein stuff goes, it's weaker than Double Star, which I didn't like Double Star either. The reason is because it's kind of a diatribe about this guy's life and what he likes about it. And I just didn't feel the Heinlein that writes Stranger in a Strange Land and The Moon is a Harsh Mistress is far looser in his kind of layout of the novel, right? It's not all a guy just telling you his memories. Stuff is happening and you feel like it's happening. And this thing, it doesn't really do what Haldeman does in the Forever War with his battle scenes, or what is done in Dune, Herbert's Dune, where you really feel that events are happening. I don't think Heinlein reached that with this. So I think it's interesting to read it as a piece, as a landmark piece of fiction. But I don't like it. I don't love it as a novel. I didn't enjoy reading it. I don't think I'll be rereading it anytime soon, or probably ever. I read it a long time ago. And it just seems dry to me. It just seems dry and removed and things like that. That's a mosquito. That was a mosquito that was buzzing in front of me. So, yes, Starship Troopers, this is take 8 on this review. And when we come back, I have a little pile of Hugo Award winners, and we'll be continuing on with that. Bye, everybody.